Hello and welcome to the Gestalt IT Roundtable podcast. I'm Stephen Foskett. I am the organizer of Gestalt IT and Tech Field Day. We're going to talk today about differentiation, product differentiation. And as Enrico Signoretti brings up, every day we get an email from Kickstarter that there's a new whatever. Now, I'm into watches. Every day there's a new company that has a new watch. And you know what? They're all the same thing. They use the same components. They're just packaged a little bit differently. And they're trying to make them sound magical and revolutionary. How do you differentiate in a commodity market? And this is a big problem for enterprise IT because enterprise IT is rapidly commoditizing. Everything uses Intel CPUs now. Not just storage, but networking and servers and everything is built on Intel CPUs. Everything in networking is built on those same Broadcom chips. Everything is built by the same ODMs in China. If you look behind the bezel of pretty much any storage product, you'll see the same system. It's either Dell or Supermicro. How do we differentiate in a world when everyone's doing pretty much the same thing? Or even if they're not all doing the same thing, at least there's a lot of Me Too products. You want to jump in there, Enrico?
Yeah, I know that this in the storage industry lately. So you have a lot of Me Too companies, and it's quite a problem because, especially in the features, there is this first 6 months, 1 year when a feature is really the differentiator. Then all the others jump in and they catch up very, very quickly. I remember thing provisioning, for example. At the beginning was 2006, 2005. The first provisioning.
1996.
Oh, the great
yeah,
years.
okay, 1996. But it became after Freeport. It became very, very famous. Now 2003, right? Yeah. So, but before having a very good, another very good implementation, it took a while. Now, so it took like 5 years. 4 years, I don't know. Now it took 6 months.
Yeah.
So it takes very, very little time. I don't know if because the development process is much faster than in the past.
I think there's some leading edge technologies that are coming out, the non-volatile storage, 3DX and stuff like that. Being able to take advantage of that effectively. We saw today Kaminario had some capabilities in that regard. I think being there in order to take advantage of those technologies when they come out are important to differentiate.
But it does seem like these companies come in waves. And it's like, and I guess that's the nature of innovation, right? Yeah, it's and like you're saying, like these dedupe products, remember all those dedupe products? Turned out that was just a feature. It's just an architecture choice.
Feature.
Yeah.
They're all just features.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, right? All these flash storage companies, all flash arrays. We had that argument earlier today, right? Gartner defined storage. And all flash arrays, turns out they didn't exist. That was just an architecture choice. That was just a way to build it.
The big problem is stay innovative. Staying innovative is a very big problem today. So you have to, you design a product today, an architecture today, in 10 years, that architecture is no longer valid.
So perhaps we could look at, certainly in storage, look at the drive manufacturers. What do hard drive manufacturers do to differentiate themselves nowadays? They don't really, do they? They're all pretty much
kinetic drive,
similar devices and
SMR,
kinetic devices.
helium, right?
But all of those are just leaps around capacity, aren't they? To make the drive a little bit bigger than the next one, and then they all catch up.
The only thing that matters, the only spec that matters on hard drives today is how many TBs is it?
Yeah, and there's almost nobody even cares about reliability, really.
Yeah.
Even though there are such things that will show you that some drives are significantly less reliable, nobody really cares.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that hard drives have commoditized. We've only got 2.1 manufacturers of hard drives left, and pretty soon it's going to be 2. Yes, SMR. Yes, helium drives. That is merely an implementation detail.
Kinetic.
The only thing people care. Well, Kinetic was an attempt to have a different kind of drive, but it flopped. And the funny thing is, both of the companies had their own, and they had one, and they were trying to standardize it and trying to make something that works. They're trying to commoditize it.
But isn't that the point of commodity? Is you don't have to worry about all the speeds and feeds. It's just good enough. Like we're getting to that point where for storage we're doing the same things we did with compute. If I buy from a tier 1 vendor, I know what I'm getting. I care more about post-sale support and the nice lunch that I got taken to during the procurement decision. I don't really care about various arguments on Twitter about what is the best ASIC or what is the best back-end architectural. I mean, it's all very interesting and stuff, but let's face it, most of our customers aren't really.
Differentiation, the business model and support then? If the hardware component is
I think
coming
it's
to commodity.
It's potentially that or how you
Oh, the differentiation is in the software. What are you going to do with it? Ray, what do you have to say?
You can differentiate in hardware. It's costly, it's time consuming, but you look at 3PAR, it's ASIC. You look at Hitachi, it's their own configuration. If you look at DSSD, it's their own hardware. You can differentiate in hardware. It's costly and it's time consuming. And the question is, will the software functionality get to a point where that differentiation doesn't matter anymore?
Well, let's talk about another market where we've got commodities. You've got commodity hardware, and you've got commodity software too, and there's attempts at differentiation. Phones, right? Think about it. All the Android phones, most consumers think of them as pretty, stand-in for each other, right? They think of them as, smartphone, generic smartphone, and they'll buy whichever. Some of them will take whichever one their service provider is offering, whichever one's free, whatever like that. But then there's that one company that's differentiating by building their own phone platform. And they've got their own hardware and literally their own CPU, their own software. Is that a market? Is that a model for what could happen in the enterprise? Could we have truly differentiated products in a world of commodities?
Maybe isn't it maybe worth considering let's say the broader ecosystem of a product, for example, of a company which is offering, let's say, integration points with other products from the service line, from their line, if we go, for example, for hyper-converged, for example, 2-3 years ago, there was maybe 1-2 companies on that. Now everybody's screaming, me too, we're the one who invented it, and so on. But if you get down to the features, basically almost all the companies offer something similar. Maybe SimpliVity is maybe doing something really different in this field. I mean, with their specific technology and card, but otherwise.
SimpliVity doesn't have the hardware is very, very basic.
Yeah.
The differentiator is not there.
It's
the IP.
Yes, exactly.
So the problem is, look at Google. A couple of weeks ago, they announced that they have a CPU for artificial intelligence.
Google CPU.
Yeah, but it's Google. It's Apple. It's Google. Potentially it's Facebook. Yes. Facebook tomorrow has a problem. They can design, build, and have a product that is viable because actually they have the numbers. No one else has the numbers. So if you have a very small Chinese manufacturer, like Xiaomi a few years ago, okay, you can start just with standard hardware and you can put something on top of it to make it, more fancy, more whatever. But actually, you can start from scratch. Look at Violin.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Let's bring it back to the enterprise here. Maybe bring it back to storage. You got Violin. You got Pure with the new FlashBlade. Maybe Ray's right.
But it's hard. So I was saying the contrary. So you have Violin. They spent so much time and money building a product that now doesn't have the future and can keep up. But also 3PAR. 3PAR was bought in was 2010, 2012, right? And it was not going very good. You have to think about. So 3PAR was lucky. Okay, that there was Dell and HP fighting for them. A lot of money spent on them. Okay, and then it's HP that can continue to develop the chip. But actually, think about 3PAR without the acquisition.
Yeah,
the key
would be a problem for them. Every other year finding a new chip and improve that chip.
But you know what? I think you'll probably find that there's less and less use of that chip in the 3PAR platform. No,
I don't think so.
I don't
think so.
I think they use it, but I don't think they use it entirely.
They move compression in there. They're moving functionality in there. A lot of their new functionality is coming out. I think it's important if you're going to do hardware innovation to provide real value from it. And the problem is if the hardware innovation doesn't really supply the value, and there's software that can come over here and do the same functionality almost as much without the hardware development costs and time and all that stuff, that's when you lose out. I think that the challenge with Apple versus Android, Apple defined the market for smartphones to some extent, but they also went after it from a consumer side, understanding what the value is and how are you going to make this sort of environment as easy as possible. And that's where that's where they really expanded.
But they had.
I don't want to. So, are we sure that the final goals of Apple and Google are the same?
No.
Because Google sell advertisement and search. So they want the phone in the hand of 2, 3, 4 billion people, if possible. Apple want to make money on each single device. Okay, luxury devices are the best devices to make money. So you can differentiate when Google wants 100. If possible, they want $10 phone if it's possible, because they want that you search and you buy products.
Yeah, I agree. If Google could get Android given out for free, as long as it served as long as it fed back into the Google search stuff, they would be perfectly happy for it, right? And that's how they Android really is free. So you're right. Yeah. So Google's trying to feed the Google machine. Apple's trying to make margin. So it's really not. There is so far no enterprise analogy for Google, right? There's no enterprise system that is just trying to feed the machine. I don't know, maybe Amazon. But you're right. There's not a direct parallel there. So, but it is so difficult to try to figure out. Yeah, is it still possible to really differentiate your products, or is it just part of the current wave of development? Now it's the object storage wave. Now it's the software-defined storage wave. Now it's the OpenStack storage wave, or the Docker storage wave, or whatever comes next. Right. And
the thing with Apple is that they owned everything, right? They own the hardware. They can make those differentiations. In the enterprise space, you've got all these different variables, right? And we heard today through Kaminario that they're looking at futures. They're looking at how they're going to define the storage path itself to get those differentiators on their storage platform.
So are we able to define the differentiators? So if you are an enterprise, you are buying an application. You are not buying infrastructure, actually. So at the end of the day, look at thing provisioning. Do you have thing provisioning? Yes. Check. Do you have a snapshot? Yes. Check.
Do you have compression?
Your problem is competing with.
I think the last.
So I talked with a customer a few days ago, and they're thinking, okay, now that AWS has an instance that can run SAP HANA, we will try it.
I want to hear from Ray.
The last company that can be an Apple of enterprise was IBM and mainframe. They owned it all. Ooh. They had software, they had hardware, they had everything. But what they did was they tried to extract more margin than they should have. They tried to really control that space rather than really allowing effectively a more open environment.
And frankly, you could say the same about Apple. So there we go.
Ray, they still do that now, because if you look at the older versions of the mainframe software, you can run it all on your PC quite happily. They won't open source or release any of it. Yeah. You think you really want your platform to be popular, you would do that, but they don't. They want to control it. But I was just going to say one thing, if I can, just to finish off what you were saying, Ray, about the hardware. You were saying about the differentiation in the hardware and how things like DSSD have come around and so on. In some respects, if you look at some of those developments, they've been in quite niche markets. So as the hardware is getting more specialized in certain parts of storage, it's actually becoming more niche, whereas the commodity stuff is moving, to cheaper ways of doing things. And I wonder whether as we go further, we're going to find that we're pushing that to a tighter and tighter funnel, where the ability to create something that's more unique only targets a smaller market segment. And as soon as that market segment becomes more popular, it commoditizes, and other people start building similar things that then are difficult to differentiate against.
And I think that's a pretty wise thought. I mean, if you look at, and not just from a hardware perspective, but a truly differentiated storage product. Look at something like SolidFire. It was designed for a certain specific use case, multi-tenant block storage for the cloud with quality of service and all that. We were saying earlier, that's a market of just a few dozen potential customers, who would potentially want that, but those people really, really want it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the example of the top of your pyramid.
So getting back to Enrico's thing at the very beginning of this, about how to differentiate and the fact that you can't, ultimately that demonstrates that we're in a commodity market or something. Because it's more difficult to differentiate because it's not specialized in you and addressing a different discussion.
Yeah. And, in terms of commoditization too, somebody mentioned SimpliVity. I mean, yeah, they've got an ASIC and they insist that they need that in order to achieve, their global dedupe and the, performance that they want. But at the same time, I guarantee you that as soon as, the next generation Xeons come out and they find that it's got the performance they need, that chip disappears.
Yeah.
Because why would you have a custom accelerator if you don't need a custom accelerator? You're just wasting money. You're giving away margin because they have to compete with people who don't have custom chips. So why bother? So does anybody else want to chime in on differentiation? Anything else? Can you see this happening? Can you see our industry re-differentiating, or are we just doomed for commoditization? I think we're doomed.
Yep.
All right, very good. On that note, for me, Stephen Foskett, thank you very much for joining us for this really sad and depressing discussion of commoditization and the doom of the industry. If you'd like to learn more about the doom of your industry, head over to gestaltit.com/podcast. You'll find a lot more episodes of this just as soon as we record them.
The On-Premise IT Roundtable is once again brought to you by Gestalt IT, home to IT coverage from across the enterprise. Make sure to follow us on Twitter @GestaltIT and at facebook.com/GestaltIT. Very original. The On-Premise IT Roundtable is produced by Rich Straffolino. That's me. Until next time, from all of us here at Gestalt IT, have a super sparkly day.